FOMO.
My name is Patrick J. McGinnis, and I'm a FOMO Sapiens. And since you're here, I'm going to bet that you are too. And when you're like us and Monday comes around, you don't dread the new week. No, you wake up every Monday morning knowing that this week might just be the best one yet. This is FOMOnday, the snackable show that starts your week right with hot takes, life hacks, listener mail, and even some FOMO therapy. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of FOMOndays, the snackable companion to FOMO Sapiens, which of course will be back on Thursday with a full meal episode. But until then, happy FOMOnday, best day of the week. I'm your host, Patrick J. McGinnis, venture capitalist by day, author and podcaster by night, and FOMO Sapiens 24/7. Now today, I want to talk about KPIs. And I bet some of you don't deal with KPIs or haven't thought about KPIs or maybe don't know what KPI stands for. So let me demystify that straight away. Key performance indicators. And the reason I'm thinking about KPIs, it's like the universe was whispering in my ear because one of my closest friends just joined the board of an organization and they're going through the metrics and trying to figure out how to measure success. And they don't really have KPIs in place. And so I was suggesting, you got to get yourself some KPIs. And he said, well, what does that mean? And so I rhapsodized about KPIs. I could talk about KPIs for hours. I love them. And then at the same time, what was so insane is that our sponsor, NetSuite, they basically sent me this link. You can go check it. You can go check suite.com/FOMO. And it is a link where you can download a KPI checklist. So of course I sent this over to my friend. I read it myself. It's very good. It is very comprehensive. It gives you everything you need to know to get your KPIs on point. So first of all, I'm going to ask you to go check that out. If you're interested in the topic of KPIs, you want to go check that out. netsuite.com/FOMO. You can download it there. It's very cool. And I want to talk about why KPIs matter and how to select them. But I want to take you back in the Patrick McGinnis time machine to why I discovered that these mattered. So I was right out of college working in venture capital. And I remember very well, we had invested in a company, a really amazing company, actually. It was called Hispanic Teleservices Corporation, based in Monterrey, Mexico at the time. Call centers where you would have English-speaking Mexicans servicing the U.S. market. And we were doing very well. The company actually ended up doing extraordinarily well. It was sold to a company called Teleperformance. So that is a winning investment. But my job as the junior guy on the team was to figure out the KPIs. Basically, we made the investment and then we had to identify the key performance indicators that we wanted to track every month. And we would have the company send us like a little report of the things that they were doing. And so I had to go through the process of figuring out like what matters. And it was a very valuable process because it's sort of like you're getting back to basics. Like, what are the things that matter in this company? What are the backward-looking things? Like what happened, last month? What are the leading indicators? What things might be, signs of things getting better or worse? How do we identify them? And then how do we sort of, not overwhelm ourselves with analysis paralysis, right? You can't have 9,000 KPIs. By definition, key performance indicator means you can't have, a ton of them. You have to focus. And so that was the exercise we went through. The investment did really well, so I'd love to think my KPIs helped a little bit. And I have gone on to do this in many other settings. And the great thing about KPIs is obviously great for an investor, great for an individual, great for an entrepreneur, right? Putting these things in place, like your personal KPIs, could be really interesting as well. Those KPIs and how you identify them and institute them are going to be our focus today. So I want to take a little break. And while I'm taking a break, maybe you can go check out netsuite.com/FOMO. That way you're up to speed on KPIs if that's interesting to you. And we will talk about why KPIs matter a little bit more and then how to select them right after this break.
FOMO. FOMO.
All right, KPIs. Love me some KPIs. So what do they do for us? Well, they provide focus. It's sort of like, very Sinekian, Simon Sinek, like start with why. It's kind of like why. Why do we do this business? What are the important things? You can then identify the KPIs that support that. So for example, this is one way to think about it when you have a startup, right? You have to pick some metrics to track to know if things are on the right road. And a lot of times, if you've ever read the book, The Lean Startup, people pick vanity metrics. It's like sales growth. Well, when you are making $1 and then you make $3, you have, your sales growth is like 200%, I guess. But is that really the right thing to look at? I mean, it looks nice on paper, but 3 is still very low. Of course, it's still higher than 1, but you get my point. Thinking about some of the really core drivers that will support the business going forward, that is where you want to get. So yeah, maybe that is one of them, but it could also be recurring revenue. It could also be things like how many people signed up for your beta product, stuff like that. So those, figuring out where the business needs to focus right now and aligning KPIs, that'll really help you in terms of just getting yourself focused on the right things. Obviously, great for measuring performance and trends. It supports decision-making. It can be very motivating. Great KPIs are something that everybody can look at together and say, okay, what do we need to get to? How do we get there? Let's set some goals. And then they help you to make decisions around resource allocation, which is always important. Like, what should we invest in? Where are we underperforming that we need to strengthen our performance? And of course, they set you up for a culture of continuous improvement. You're always striving to up the game so you can, look at the KPIs over time and say, okay, what did we do last year? What do we do this year? How do we go higher, better, faster? Now, setting KPIs, of course, then is going to be really critical. And so the first one, and back, this is Senechian, it's like, what are our objectives? Why are we doing this? Where do we want this company to go? And knowing where you want to go. If you don't know that when you're starting a company or, doing things in your life, obviously it's really hard to come up with KPIs. So it's a good exercise to be like, what is our goal this year? Well, our goal this year is to figure out how to get people to download our app or to get to walk into our restaurant. So let's track that. Like, how many people walked in? How many downloads were there? It doesn't have to be rocket science. Like, those are very basic things, but that's why they're KPIs, key performance indicators. Number 2, think of those SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Use SMART goals criteria to select the KPIs. That way, you know that it's going to be real. It's not just sort of squishy-ishy kind of stuff. Number 3, don't do this in a vacuum. Like, coming up with KPIs without speaking to the people who are involved, not a good idea. You want to make sure that you talk to the folks who are involved. Like, it's a personal KPI. You can do it yourself, obviously. But if you are an entrepreneur, go talk to the sales team, talk to the people who are doing ops and figure out what's important to them and then integrate that into your thinking. Next, this one is super important. And this is where we get into FOMO stuff. Do not have too many. I like to think 7 to 10. That's plenty. It depends. You can feel it out. But if you have like 30 KPIs, like, they're not really KPIs, right? They're just PIs. You want to really distill it down to the ones that are going to truly drive performance in the business. 5, this is not a monolith. It's not static. You will regularly assess and review and replace over time. So this is something you should look at probably every 6 to 12 months and say, are these the right KPIs for us right now based on where we're trying to go with the business? And by the way, there might be some that just never change. Like, you've identified one and you just realize, well, it doesn't really, do anything. We kind of skip over it every week. Well, maybe that's not a KPI after all, right? So that's important as well. 6, you want to think about lagging and leading. So you want to have backward-looking ones like, annual profits last year. And you want to have ones that could predict future outcomes like your customer satisfaction scores that'll drive future business. So, net promoter score, stuff like that. That mix is great because you'll get a kind of a full 360 view of where things are going and where they have been. Number 7, communicate. So KPIs are great. Put them on the wall, right? When you walk into a factory, like an auto factory, it's sort of like Toyota Production System. They put all these stats on the wall. If you ever read about TPS, it's cool. Like, everybody knows what are the things we're tracking. And so sharing the KPI so everybody has a stake in the game. Or, for example, with personal KPIs, you can just tell people around you, hey, I'm working on these 5 things right now. I want to make it public. I want accountability. It's super important. And finally, feel free to leverage tech. You can make dashboards. You can automate this stuff. So you don't need to have it on an Excel spreadsheet. This is what computers are for. And then, of course, you can then run all kinds of beautiful reports and share them with all your stakeholders. So that is what KPIs are about. Really important, either in a business or a personal context. And I'll admit, on the personal side, I've never really done this. And some people do. I think a lot of people, especially with coaches and stuff, they'll set these KPIs. And I think it's very important and probably something that we should all be doing. So, I'll probably take my own advice on that one very soon. But definitely an area you want to learn more about. So if you're interested in this topic, again, netsuite.com/FOMO, go check it out and let me know what you think. You can find me at PJ McGinnis on Twitter, Patrick J. McGinnis on Instagram, and on email at letsconnect@patrickmcginnis.com. Let me know what you think. Send me ideas. And have a great week. We'll see you back on Thursday.
FOMO.
If you like today's show, please be sure to rate it and recommend it to your friends. And as always, you can find me on Instagram at Patrick J. McGinnis, on Twitter at PJ McGinnis, and on the web at FOMOsapiens.com or PatrickMcGinnis.com, where you can get all kinds of free resources to live a more decisive and entrepreneurial life.
FOMO.
Want more FOMO Sapiens and FOMOnday? Head over to FOMOsapiens.com, where you can listen to past episodes, learn more about the show, and find out how to advertise. You can also connect with me on Instagram at Patrick J. McGinnis and on Twitter at PJ McGinnis.